A large group of college students from different fields are assembled in a rundown church to study a mysterious artifact that's been kept secret for thousands of years. This is Prince of Darkness, and now we're going to discuss why it's John Carpenter's most underrated film. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Ooh.
This is a horror movie podcast, and if all is went to plan, this is your first episode of October. Hence, welcome to the Octoberthon, where we put out as many episodes as we can over the 31 days of October. I believe due to the way the weeks worked out, this is going out on October the 2nd. Usually it'll be the 1st, but that's the day the ace goes out, so this is the 2nd. I
mean, and God forbid you have a better show going out.
Oh, come on now. I mean, don't make me like fight between them, Tim. I'm on both, so they're clearly both excellent.
Well, I know one person that's not on one.
What, David?
I mean, I guess technically, yeah. But,
yes.
But that secret sauce that the Ace doesn't have, that little extra spice that makes Screams After Midnight just oh so nice.
No, that's coming to mind. I don't know if you're getting that, Tim. Don't know what tree you're barking up, but I'm not quite following.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes, welcome everyone.
Sick freaks.
Today, we are going to talk about John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness. Now, if you're a long-time fan, and Tim's cat is apparently, because I just heard her clear meow.
She's excited.
We actually have done this movie before. But we did this movie on the very first episode of Screams After Midnight, when there was two other people here. And Tim's cats were just as unruly. But yeah, there were it was a long time ago. That episode, by the way, I think is 30 minutes long, which is absurd.
Yeah, too long.
yeah, it's true. Just wild how short some of those early episodes were. Mm-hmm. But every so often, we've done not that many of them, but every so often we've went back and we've redone a movie that we did in that first 50 or so episodes, because we weren't that good at this yet. Arguably we're not even that good now, but we're better than we were then, which I would definitely argue. Mm-hmm. And Prince of Darkness is just one that I knew I wanted to do again at some point, to give it the full fat modern treatment of how we talk about movies. But also, it just so happens that episode 600 is the next episode. Ooh. So what better way to sort of lead into episode 600 than with a revisit of the very beginning of Prince of Darkness. So
hey, that's beautiful. Wow.
Thank you, Tim. I thought about it a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
And to think, I wanted to do Mosquito Man.
I don't know if it quite had the gravitas going into this next episode, Tim. Yeah, we'll start spoiler free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. Mm-hmm. If you're liking the show on YouTube, hit the like button, helps us out a bunch if you do. Mm-hmm. And of course, you can get bonus content over on Patreon, which is
600 episodes. We deserve something, for God's sake.
I love how you didn't even wait until I mentioned Patreon. You said give us money before I even got to that part.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want them sending it to the Patreon, because I'm not going to see that. Send it to my personal Venmo.
Oh, bloody hell, this is chaos. I love
what they do before Patreon. Do they just send checks to podcasts?
I don't think podcasts were profitable, Tim. I think that's the truth of it. I mean, keep in mind, podcasts have only been a thing since, the late 2000s, give or take?
In this form. But the grand tradition of the oral storytellers dates back to, dare I say, caveman times.
Well, until you said caveman times, I was going to say, what you mean, radio talk shows? But those had adverts, Tim, and they... you didn't get specialized topics like this, we were just talking about a horror movie from 1987.
Oh, bleak times.
Oh dear. God, I hope this is no one's first episode, because Tim has derailed the entire goddamn intro. This episode's for the people who have been here for at least 100 episodes, if not 400 or 500 of them. But yes, welcome everyone, as we usher in season 82 of Streams After Midnight. Not that we've been seasoning these. I actually did on my like spreadsheet where I've got all our ratings and stuff, I did actually put them into seasons just based on year, but technically we're on like season 10 or something like that. So
okay,
yeah, wild times. But yes, what is Prince of Darkness, one might ask, to actually get to the movie we're here to talk about? Well, there's a lot of it that I'm going to say for spoilers, because there's a lot of interesting mythology in this movie to get to. But I will just say that Donald Pleasence plays a priest who finds out a secret underneath an old church in LA, I think, and basically gets a bunch of like science students and, well, to be honest, different types of student really, but to basically do an investigation on this mysterious item that's in the basement. What is that item? It seems to be a big vial of green liquid that is swirling and is, you know, it's doing stuff, right? It's alive in some way. But what is it? What's it doing? What's its purpose? Where did it come from? Where did it go?
Where's it going?
Joe. I was making a Cotton Eye Joe joke, Tim.
Oh, of course.
I was way ahead of you. So, yeah, that's the basic premise. There's a few faces in this you might recognize other than Donald Pleasence, but it's not exactly a movie with a huge cast per se. It's more this ensemble, and it's got a lot of kind of interesting ideas. It mixes science with a bit of theology, and obviously the movie's called Prince of Darkness, so you expect it to get to something to do with that at a certain point, which it does. Yeah. But we'll get into all that in time. But obviously we had seen this before. But Tim.
Yeah.
Do you like Prince of Darkness?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even gonna try to do a fake out or anything. I absolutely love this movie. I'm not sure if this is a hot take, but this is like, I think like low key one of Carpenter's best. Like, I mean, it's hard to really, you could say almost anything from, his first 10-15 years or whatever is his best movie, and it's kind of hard to argue. But I don't know, like for me, this one just really hits. Like, I love just how unabashedly weird it is, and not that like Carpenter hasn't done other like weird things in his movies, like Big Trouble in Little China is like pretty darn weird, and then like the thing definitely has like crazy stuff happen in it, but like I don't think it's like a that the actual meat of the storyline is like that crazy or whatever. But this I think is just like a pretty out there premise, but I don't know, it just works. I love that's like kind of like how dark it is. I love the score is great, obviously. There's some really cool gore and special effects, but and some fun character stuff and everything. But I mean, really, it's the story just always sucks me in every time. It's just so like kind of bonkers, but also very like fascinating, interesting. There's a lot of stuff to talk about there. But yeah, like I didn't grow up on this one, so I forget when I first saw it. Like it wasn't the first time when I saw it when we did it for the show way back then, but it had maybe only been like a few years or something after I saw it for the first time. But I don't know, this one just really sticks with me. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, you started that by saying you don't know if it's a hot take to say if this is one of Carpenter's best movies. I think it is to a lot of people, but not to me, damn it. I love Prince of Darkness. I kind of fight between this and Assault on Precinct 13 for which one is his third best movie, because for me it's Halloween, it's The Thing, and then it's either this or Assault on Precinct 13 for very different reasons. Obviously, they're very different movies, but I love it.
I can't argue with that at all.
Yeah, I love the vibe of the whole movie. I love the tone. I loved it from the very first second of this movie. As soon as that bass line kicks in the music, it feels like foreboding, like this sense of doom is coming. I love like the convoluted mythology it kind of builds up, and it's mostly just suggesting things and ideas, but it's so rich with these ideas, and it's interesting so much stuff. There's even a little bit of science fiction creeping in at a certain point. all of that I love. I think it's great. I think it's oozing style because Carpenter knows what he's doing with that sort of thing.
I think vibes is a good way to put it. Yeah, like this movie just really has such a rich like vibe to it.
It's funny because I mean, by the time this comes out, it'll have been like 2 months since this episode came out. But we just, at the time of recording, our episode of Abigail review just went out. And my main complaint with that is how lacking in vibes and atmosphere it was. It was so bland. And watching this, and from the first second, it's just so rich. Where it draws me in. Like, it actually might be one of the best sort of like opening 10 minutes of like drawing me into like a lot of characters and what's going on very effectively.
You're talking about the entire credits.
Oh yeah, the opening titles, because it kind of cuts between characters and introducing them as the opening titles are coming up. But it's so effective in what it's doing. It's kind of comical that it takes like 10 minutes before that final, directed by John Carpenter, comes up. But you know,
I did bust out the Blu-ray for this, and afterwards I was watching. They had like a 10-minute interview with Carpenter about it, and he even said like, yeah, I think maybe the credits went on a little bit long, which is kind of funny. But I don't mind it because, like you're saying, like it's setting up this tone, this atmosphere. So I'm like, I'm sucked into it.
I love how it kind of like introduces like Donald Pleasence and his side of things, and then like one side of like the scenes, and then the other side of the scenes is the uncle from Three Ninjas. Sorry, what was his name here in the movie? I always forget. Well, Victor Wong's the actor, but it's
B something, right?
Yeah, Barak is his last name. So, like, it introduces him teaching some of his students who are also some of our main characters, and he's talking about theoretical physics and like quantum physics and that kind of thing. And I love that at the end of the opening titles, we get a scene where Pleasence and Wong meet. And like it's like, oh, these like all of a sudden like even just the opening titles had a lot of things that then came together by the end. It's like, okay, these two worlds are colliding and both of them are very relevant to each other, and that's interesting in itself. Actually, just to like, I know when I first saw it because I first saw it on Blu-ray. I bought the Scream Factory Blu-ray in like 2012 when that came out, something like that.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, just sort of bought it. Hadn't seen it before just because it was John Carpenter. Had a cool cover. There was no reason not to.
Yeah, which that's kind of why I was saying like, oh, I don't know if it's a hot take, because like this movie weirdly, I do think it is well loved within horror circles and stuff, but it doesn't seem like it really has broken through kind of the casual audience or whatever the way like, I mean, obviously like Halloween and The Thing, like even people that aren't huge horror fans know about it, but I don't know. I feel like this one is kind of surprisingly niche. Like, not as many people have maybe seen it, whatever, but everyone I know that I talk to that have seen it, like they all love it. Like,
I think it's just more hardcore. It's just a more of a hardcore plot with lots of it's weirder. It's making you think about a lot of things, and not necessarily in a super heady way. Like, I don't think this movie's like super intelligent in that sense, but it's throwing so much at you that if you don't like the ideas that it's dishing at you, I can see a casual audience just being like, what the hell's going on? I can't follow this. It's not holding your hand. But to be fair, I think that's true of all horror directors. Look at Wes Craven. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream. Yeah, they hit like the casuals and the mainstream audience, but everything else he ever made.
Have seen Deadly Friend.
Exactly, not enough people have seen Deadly Friend with the killer robot and the infamous basketball scene. But I think I think most horror directors, only get a couple of like mainstream breakthrough like mega successes.
And I think I there's something interesting I think you said there where like it is tackling like some pretty like interesting heavy themes, and in a way it is kind of like mixing this like science and religious kind of stuff that I feel like is pretty early on for that kind of thing. Like it wouldn't seem like as new a topic like nowadays, but I don't know, for back then, like it seems like maybe pretty fresh, but I like what you said though, where like it doesn't really do it in a way that ever feels like the movie thinks it's like smarter, than it, for its own good or whatever, and also like it's funny because this is kind of like like a religious horror movie, but I never really think of it in that way, and I like that it's it tackles a lot of religious stuff, but it never feels preachy, like the way a lot of stuff does.
If anything, it kind of takes religion and says, here's the science that religion is based on, and like how religion's kind of relied about a couple of things, but how it's kind of right about a couple of these other things, or like it kind of tackles it in an interesting way. I'd say it feels kind of pulpy in how it tackles that stuff, where it just kind of feels like it's trying to have fun. It feels like there's someone behind the camera, in this case Carpenter, obviously, but like just mixing these ideas and being like, okay, but what if this? But what if this? And it just feels like a lot of just unfiltered creativity. It does make it a little messier, perhaps, in some of his other movies, or any movie that has like a really tight script with really sharp focus, but is a like 100-minute ride where I'm just like constantly fast, and it's so dense with ideas that every time I watch it, I've forgotten half of the things that are in it. So I'm just in awe again as I'm like taking the details in, and I'm like, oh, I forgot that part. I forgot they said this. I forgot they translated that part of the book or whatever, and it just kind of keeps coming like that. So no, it's excellent.
And it still manages to have fun and like have likable characters and like really cool moments of gore and special effects. So yeah, I don't know, it's just great. Yeah, it's like all the Carpenter stuff that you want, and while also kind of feeling like new and fresh. Like it's not just, all right, he's doing another Halloween or another thing or whatever. Like, which I don't know if people give Carpenter enough credit for that, but like he has so many like masterpieces, and they're all like very different. Like he's not someone that just kind of does the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, he's got his misses, but that's kind of like a product of the fact that he just wouldn't do the same thing again. He famously denied like even being involved in Halloween sequels. Like they wanted him to come back and do H2O with Jamie Lee Curtis, and he declined it. Obviously, he eventually, in his video game playing old age, said, "Yeah, sure, put my name on it, and I'll take a big paycheck." But it took a long time before he accepted some free money for just associating with a new sequel.
And anytime you listen to any interview he does, he just seems like the coolest dude. Like he's never shies away from like talking about things in like a very direct manner. And he always just seems like he just wants to like chill and play video games now, which like respect. I mean, I can't deny that that's what I would want to do. Yeah,
and before someone corrects me, I realize that he did do Escape from LA in the 90s, but I was specifically meaning Halloween. He didn't give in to that. I assume he wanted to do that sequel for whatever reason at the time.
But what did he do anything with Halloween 3? Like did he just produce it or something? Or
I think he was he was a producer in Halloween 3, because that was the thing. He was involved in Halloween 2, but he's very vocal in hindsight that he like had to drink himself into like a coma to get through the script writing of that. He didn't direct it, obviously. He just helped write the script. But he said that was a miserable experience, and it's kind of what made him never want to just retread the old ground. Which is actually why last year on Ace, I saw Ghosts of Mars for the first time. And that movie is so depressing because it's John Carpenter doing a greatest hits of like other movies that he's made, but it's so terrible. It's really sad. It's a little bit Assault on Precinct 13. It's a little bit The Thing. It feels sad.
That's a bummer. I actually don't think I've actually seen that one, unless like maybe I watched it on TV at some point when I was really young. But I'm pretty sure that's like the one of his that I still haven't crossed off my list.
Yeah, that was I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that make that movie bad, but that was the depressing part to me. Is it was like him trying to just relive some glory of like other movies that he'd already done better, and it was like So, yeah, rough times.
Yeah, it's such a shame. I think we maybe talked about this before, but like, I mean, if he's just happy doing what he's doing, like, all the more power to him. But I don't know. I feel like I would just like to see like one more go at it for him, because like it's always depressing when you have these like just amazing directors, but then their last movie is just the most. Not even if it's like bad, but just like when it's like real boring, nothing movie. Like the last thing he did, The Ward, was just. It's so just boring and forgettable. Like, I don't know. I'd love it if someone, and I mean, maybe he's had offers and he's denied them or something, but like, I don't know, I'm surprised like Blumhouse or something hasn't just, knocked at his door and offered him like a buttload of money just to do like anything, at this point.
I mean, I don't even think I want it at this point. I think it's just been too long. I don't think there'd be some glorious come. I don't think he wants to do it. So, I think it's just a lot of directors go downhill in their later career, and I guess just be thankful that he just sort of said, you know what, enough of this when he did.
Yeah.
And called it quits.
In his defense, though, I don't know if it was like his fault, though. Like, I'm sure a lot of it was just him trying to, finagle his way through the studio system and not really getting all the stuff he needed, like in some of his later movies. I would imagine.
I don't know. It's because I think he had like a good decade or so, maybe even a decade and a half of bad movies by the time he wrapped it up. So,
well, like a lot of his movies like didn't do great when they came out, right? Like it's only maybe in the last couple of, like The Thing was a pretty famous flop, right? When it came out, and it was only at like later that it kind of got reclaimed as this masterpiece.
Yeah, but even in that era though, he was putting bangers out every other movie during like the the 80s. So yeah, I do think there is a decline of some kind. It happened with a lot of directors. Brian De Palma's another famous example of like once you get to like the 90s or late 90s, it starts to just sharply drop in quality. Yeah. Some directors are a bit more like all over the place. Wes Craven's a great example of that, actually, because he'd like have like a banger, then he'd make something just completely terrible, and then he'd be back to something decent, and then something good, and a complete shit movie again, and so on and so on.
I love Wes, but yeah, I think he is a pretty uneven director, unfortunately.
Very erratic. So going back to Prince of Darkness, though, I actually did not recognize him, but I have inquired because I've seen his photo on IMDb. So one of the characters in this is a regular character on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, Hitchcock from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's in this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he was, I guess, the kind of like older guy, right?
In this?
Oh, no? Okay.
He's the balding guy who's got like a neck beard.
Okay, yeah, that's who I was talking about.
All right, yeah, but compared to like Donald Pleasence and Victor Wong, he's hardly the old guy.
I mean, he looks older than like the other students who I imagine are, younger, or at least look younger.
I don't know. The main dude with the mustache, I felt like was probably about the same age. I think he was just better well kept. He fixed himself up better.
How now? Do you think that they got that guy just because like Carpenter couldn't get Atkins to do it? He's like, because that guy seems like such like a young Atkins to me.
Well, no, because the character's meant to be a college student, so I don't think he ever.
But no, that's
Tom
what I'm
Atkins.
saying. But no, I'm saying like maybe he wanted Tom Atkins and he was trying to like rack his brain and be like, is there a way we can pull him off as a college student? And then eventually he's like, I just got to go for the younger model.
Surely you'd make him one of the professors if you really wanted to hire Tom Atkins.
I think he can do anything. Just just have him be like, a late in life like divorced dad who's like, I'm going back to college or something. Like that's fine.
He was like 50 when this movie came out. I don't think. I mean, okay, like it's something that some people do. Some people do go back to college, but it does feel forced in a movie though, because it just feels like an excuse to have that actor be here. Even though it is a real thing, it absolutely is.
Maybe you could have been like one of the parents coming to pick up the kids or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, you guys are hanging out in this church."
Do you know what I've always thought's weird about this movie, actually? Is on the commentary track, it's John Carpenter, which makes sense, and there's a second person on the commentary track. It's an actor. Would you like to guess which actor from the movie is co-hosting the audio commentary track that was on the Blu-ray and is on the iTunes version that I watched today?
I'm assuming it's one of the lesser characters, unless it's like Alice Cooper or something like that.
No, it's not Alice Cooper. Yeah, we haven't mentioned Alice Cooper's in this yet, but it's not Alice Cooper. Oh, that would have been a wild thing. No, his name's Peter Jason. He plays the other sort of doctor, like professor dude.
Okay. Yeah.
So Tim's racking his brain like, who are you talking about? Yeah, it's like it's such a weird pick. Like, I guess he was just available. He's like, yeah, I'll come and do a commentary. I'm free. Yeah. Oh dear. I remember in the commentary. I haven't listened to it in like a decade, but I vaguely remember him being impressed with camera work and Carpenter just kind of shrugging and going, "That's not that hard. It's easy." Like, all right, John. All right.
That sounds like him.
Humble bragging. Very good. I mean, as far as anything else to talk about, I love the look of the movie. I love the location. It mostly takes place, once everything's set up, it takes place in this church, because that's where they all go to sort of do this research over the weekend. I don't know, is there anything else you want to talk about before we get to spoilies?
I mean, no, I mean, again, I'm just big fan of this movie. Would highly recommend it. You know, if anyone hasn't seen it. But yeah, let's dive into the spoilers because that's where a lot of the fun stuff is going to be.
For sure. So yeah, I also clearly would highly recommend it. I think it's a fascinating movie that takes some really big swings, and I've loved it more every time I've seen it. I've probably seen it like 4 times now, and every time I've watched it,
probably about the same for me.
Yeah, I've liked it more. So,
and it's I think it's a good October movie too. Like, there's nothing specifically about it that's like Halloween-y, you know. But I don't know. I think it still is a good pick for the season. I don't think I watch it every year, but it's definitely one that's usually in the running when I'm picking out like some of my favorite movies to watch during the season.
Yeah, sure. All right. Spoilers then for Prince of Darkness. You have been warned.
Ooh.
We'll get into it. And I'm not even sure how to tackle this one, Tim, because there's so many ideas thrown out in this movie that part of me just wants to decipher what's like the overall, like what's going on before we even just talk about like how it plays out in the movie. It's because
I feel like you. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say there's almost no way for me to remember exactly when each nugget of information that builds like the overall picture when those are given during the movie, because like, you know, there's like a little insert where someone says, "Oh, I've translated this one paragraph from this scripture book that was next to the tank." Oh, it says this.
I mean, I feel like you can just start with maybe just tackling the big tub of goo.
The big tub of goo, the demon sauce, or the ooze from Ghostbusters 2, or
it is the ooze. You're right.
or Secret of the Ooze, the second Turtles movie, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so right, so there's this big sort of cylinder style tank of this liquid that is swirling around, and when the movie starts, we see this old priest with a key, right, or he's got a little chest, I should say, and he dies, right? This old man's dying, and he's clutching this thing, and that key that's inside the chest goes to Donald Pleasence, who's like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, I'm confused." And he goes to this church where this guy was basically the last man standing, operating this church. No one went to it anymore. It was like shut down and abandoned. But in the basement, this key leads to this tank, which has been kept there in secret for 2,000 years, give or take, right? So that's part one of this whole mystery. Part two is that no one really knows what it is. There's a big book next to it, and it's from here where Donald Pleasence, a priest, brings in Victor Wong's character, says, "Hey, look at this thing. There's something going on. Can you like study it?" But they talk about how there's a feeling coming from it. There's like a presence, and one of the things that's teased early on as well is that you see like, you know, anthills all acting up like on the ground, and there's kind of this idea that the world's already starting to be affected from whatever is emanating from this tank. Like the world's already starting to change.
And I mean, again, like I kind of forget about some of the order of things, but like you're starting to see, you know, these like unhoused people are gathering around the church. Yes.
And the main homeless person is Alice Cooper, which I guess if there's one part of this movie that feels a little weird, is just this kind of like all homeless people are like drones for Satan. It's kind of a weird take. I'm not sure if there's like a specific reason for that, if it's maybe just because of the vicinity of this neighborhood, if they're maybe just the closest people there, or you could read into it a little bit. You could say that it's like, oh, these are the people that society's left behind, so they're the weakest in terms of like breaking through, like for control, like because they're at their lowest, they're vulnerable. Sure. I mean that's not unfair to say that the most vulnerable people in society, to some extent. Oh yeah, like, you know, I don't think it's trying to make like a radical statement about you know, the, you know, homeless crisis or anything, but no, I wouldn't say it is. But so the movie sets up, does this team get in, right? So where do it begin? So most of this comes from the book that's next to the tank, but it talks about a couple different things. One of the first things you see on the computer, she's like translating. This is the character of Lisa, the young Asian woman who's translating here, she types in something to, and this actually popped me because I don't know if this is the first time I've watched it since I watched Twin Peaks season 3, but I popped for this because the text mentioned Babylon, the mother of all abominations, which is a big thing in Twin Peaks season 3. So I was like, oh baby. Also in Metropolis, the classic Fritz Lang sci-fi movie. So yeah, pulling on some big theological like ideas here. But it's like, okay, all right. So it sort of teases we're dealing with evil and, you know, that kind of thing. But then when it gets into the more wild parts, where like she gathers them around and says, okay, here's some of the stuff that I've learned here. Apparently, the father of Satan, the father of Satan, like, buried this tank on Earth, right? And it's not from this scene, it's actually a different scene where the woman who's, like, doing carbon dating, says that the tank, like, some of the material, the dirt that's around the tank is, like, 7 million years old. Or something like that. And it's like, okay, so you're saying that this thing's been buried here for 7 million years. But then Lisa continues in this scene where she's saying what she's translated, and she says that an extraterrestrial, right, a star fell from the sky, and this is someone who would become known as Jesus. He was here to warn us about this thing in the tank, and that led to a sect of the church called the Order of Sleep, I want to say they were called.
Yeah.
Who then protected this secret from everyone and kept it hidden. And the reason for that, and it also says that Jesus was killed because he was making people too aware of this thing. So it's kind of like shoehorning in some mythology into why Jesus was killed. It's not, maybe not necessarily the reason they gave in the Bible, but it's more that the evil of this thing made sure he died so that it wouldn't be destroyed. It wouldn't be, they wouldn't fight it long before it's had its time to gestate or whatever. But it's swirling around. They mention at one point in the movie as well, from like a science perspective, that it's becoming something. Like it's not just like swirling. It's actually doing something. Now, what's it becoming? We don't know. Is it becoming a life form? Is it becoming a toxic gas? Is it becoming a virus? Who knows? But it's becoming something. So far, to sum up, some kind of demonic figure, the father of Satan, planted his seed, if you will, in a tank on Earth, which is apparently going to take about 7 million years to come to full form, right? And then it will somehow get out of the tank, more than that later, and influence the world and bring about the apocalypse. Jesus was trying to warn everyone that this was a thing here, and Jesus was also possibly just an alien, rather than, the Son of God. He was killed for trying to warn everyone about it. So the church had a secret order. The rest of the church didn't know. The Vatican didn't know about this. This was such a secret little part of the church that only this guy that died at the start with the key was the last remaining member. He had no one to pass this on to. He didn't have a protege in the wings that was going to come in and continue the work. Like, it's over. See, I already feel like I've said a lot. That's already so much to take in.
I'm letting you cook. Yeah, so what's funny about this is, like, if I was at a party and, like, some drunk dude tried, like, telling me about this, like, not about the movie, but, like, if they thought this, like, was a real thing, or, like, I don't know, if you watch those, like, ancient alien, like, things on the History Channel or whatever, I would just, like, fall asleep so fast. Like, I would not care. But I don't know, you put John Carpenter, like this kind of idea in his hands, and it's just so, like, goddamn fascinating. And I love, like, every bit of lore and stuff that they bring in. And
it's the mystique, and it, like, what is storytelling if not just understanding how to dish out the information in a way that makes it compelling, right? So it's just, some drunk guy just says all that to you quickly. It's just a big sludge of words. It's a big sludge of nonsense sounding things. But you have someone who dishes it out in the right pace and the right little bits, breadcrumbs throughout, so your mind kind of figures the next bit out as you're hearing more. All of a sudden, it's the damn greatest thing you've ever heard.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know, just that every time they show the just the swirling ooze, it's, you know, you'd think it would look cheesier, but it just looks so cool, and it has like such a presence in the movie. And especially like the more you find out about it, then it's like every time you cut to it, it just feels so more like, at first it's just kind of mysterious and weird, but then it just gets more and more like sinister and threatening. And
it's ominous.
Yeah, and essentially it's like still the same, you know, looking thing, but it's, I don't know, it's just such a good job. Again, Carpenter is just a master at this stuff. I feel like in so many people's hands it would just come off as like looking dumb or cheesy, but yeah, he makes it like so fascinating.
I mean,
really cool.
They chose a simple thing they could do. It's just a tank of water that's swirling. It's green, and that's it. Like, I'm sure they can achieve that and make it look real, because it's not that hard to do. Honestly, it kind of looks like the sort of thing that you expect the tyrant from Resident Evil to be like sleeping in.
Yes, I really love the aesthetic of, I don't know, like anytime like a creature or something is in a tube, and admittedly like this, it's not really like a creature, it's just more like liquid and stuff, but I love like stuff like the tyrant, like whenever you see like this big sleeping monster thing just in like a tube of liquid stuff. I don't know, it always looks cool to me.
It's literally a big test tube. That's why I think it feels that way. But I think I love the visual though, because like you said, like the part of the visual mastery of this to make it seem cool is that you've got this dark room in a basement, which is basically just a chapel. It's just an underground chapel, right? So there's the pews, there's the cross and stuff. There's crosses everywhere, and I don't know who's lighting all these candles, but there's like hundreds of candles down here. So it's this super old school religious location that could be hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, really. There's nothing else technological wise that's down here. There's no electric lights. But in the middle of all that, there's this thing that looks like it's out of like a science fiction laboratory, just sitting in the middle, and it feels otherworldly next to all these candles and all this just sort of classic biblical style structure and all that. So, you know, the visual of it is really impactful when you see it.
Yeah, it's just very unique. Again, like, I'm not saying that there hasn't been other movies that maybe have tried to talk about like similar things, but I don't know, it just feels like very unique to me. Like, I can't really think of many examples of things that have had this, like, I don't know, interesting or fresh a take, and certainly, you know, not and many examples of people that have done it better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and then now we're just getting to another aspect of this, is the idea of, I mean, so the quantum physics side of things, right? Like, you know, not all of it quite sinks in, I think, because it is a lot of gobbledygook, but there is set up at the start where Wong's character is telling his students about, you know, we have all these understandings of what the world are, but it all kind of goes to shit once you introduce quantum physics and subparticles and all the rest of it. And he starts going on a little bit. We even hear a Schrodinger's cat explanation at one point from one of the characters. But basically this idea of matter and antimatter, of particles and like antiparticles or whatever they call them. And it's at one point when he's talking to Donald Pleasence, right? And they're talking about this thing and this idea that whatever's in this tank is already made a connection to a lot of the life on Earth, like the bugs and the simple life forms. And as we see throughout the movie, it's taking over the homeless people and it's starting to infect other people as well. And it's spreading like a hive mind. And they basically talk about how, well, what if the idea of God is actually what you would name like this thing, something that connects every atom on Earth in some way that's subconsciously linked? Is that not in effect what God is, except we don't have the God version, we have the anti-God, we have the antimatter version where it's the negative. And maybe there is, you know, like another, like maybe in the positive world, if there is another world, they've got the good God, they've got the one that's actually just, I don't know, maintaining life or whatever, but we've got this antimatter version. Like my mind was just like, okay, all right, like this is so fascinating. And it gets to the point where Donald Pleasence sits and talks about how, we didn't really know anything in the church, we were just selling a product to anyone who would buy it. Like that's he's very disillusioned with his faith by the halfway point of this movie. And
I mean, honestly, this isn't a bad explanation, you know, as for the last however many years of human history. But yeah, I mean, it's funny you're talking about how you're popping earlier for like the Babylon stuff, but I not that like I don't think he necessarily like took it from this movie or whatever, but I perked up when they were talking about anti-god, because that was actually the name of like the big bad guy in the Black Hammer comics from Jeff Lemire, which I just read like the latest volume, and I mean I'm sure it's just like, you know, an easy enough name to come up with, so I doubt it was an homage to this, or maybe it is. I don't know, but that did make me go like, oh hey, that's cool.
Yeah, I honestly, if there's anything that's confusing about this movie, to be honest, is just keeping track who is Satan, who is the son of Satan. Are they what? Like, is the thing in the tank Satan himself? Is it the son of Satan, or is it the anti-god, the antichrist? Like, you know, it feels like all these terms are kind of like getting thrown around a lot, and it's hard to keep track of which one's meant to be which. So, you know, that's maybe a slight complaint if I want to make one, but like, it ultimately doesn't matter that much. And we've not even get to one of the other cool parts of all this, the science fiction element. We need to talk about the dreams, Tim.
Yeah, that's there's like so much going on that I forget about this element to it as well. But I mean, this is another part that's just like, oh, this movie is really rich with ideas.
It's so rich, because it's like halfway. It's literally about 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes out of the movie. It's almost hitting the halfway mark, when we have a character who's asleep have this dream. But what's interesting about the dream is that it looks like it's shot on video. Like, it's like, you know, it's got scan lines and it's kind of staticky as if it's like a video broadcast. And you can actually just make out like there's some voice that's sort of speaking over it a little bit in the first time, where you can just hear the voice say, "This is not a dream." And that's the only thing you can really make out that first time. But that's a really intriguing thing to hear in a dream, especially when it doesn't really look like a dream. It looks like a video, like a bit of video footage, and it, you know, it freaks the character out. It's was Walter is the first one that we see sort of dream it. He wakes up and he's kind of freaked out by it and whatever. But quite quickly after that, it's the scene with Donald Pleasence and Victor Wong, and Pleasence like, oh, by the way, there's something else I've not told you. And I think this scene even starts with Victor Wong kind of like dozing off and like waking up abruptly. So you don't see the dream again, but you see him kind of react as if he's just seen it. And Pleasence is like, hey, there's something else I need to tell you. This Order of the Sleep, and probably why they have their name, perhaps, is because for years, maybe for the last 2,000 years, they all have the same dream. If you're around this thing, you start to get this same dream. And he's like, you know, later on when he actually has a meeting with all the characters and says, hey, who's fell asleep tonight? And some of them put their hands up and say, hey, you all had a dream, right? You were looking at the front of this building, the front door, and like you heard a voice and some figure was coming out of the door. And as the movie goes on, we see more and more snippets of this, and we see like this dark, shadowy figure, presumably the Prince of Darkness, or the Satan's dad, whatever, is coming out from the building. And it's when they're talking later, they start theorizing themselves as what this could be. And okay, you want to critique the movie and say it's kind of wild that they leap to these conclusions? Sure, but these ideas are goddamn cool. So they come up with the idea that it's tachyons being beamed to them, right? The idea that if you beam a tachyon, it's an electrical signal, because part of the message in the dream is even, you know, this is not a dream. We can't send you a signal and like when you're awake, so this is the best we can do. And they theorize that, okay, well, someone's beaming his signals here faster than the speed of light, but if it's faster than the speed of light, that means it's going backwards in time. So this is a message from the future. In fact, when you hear the full message later on, it actually specifies that it's from the year 1999. You can actually hear that in the audio. And it's like, wait, hold on. So on top of all the lore building up to what this thing is in the tank, on top of what it's doing to the world, and it's kind of like taking control of everyone and causing chaos, which again, the idea that the seed of Babylon, the mother of all abominations, like that's what happens in Twin Peaks season 3. Everyone starts acting kind of wild. Things are getting darker. It's what happens in Metropolis because the evil android starts doing stuff and like causing chaos in the city. Is that broad idea? On top of that, we now have survivors of the apocalypse in the future sending a message back in time into their dreams, begging them to stop this from happening. This is a visual of like where this begins, like whatever horrible future they're in, it all starts because of this. For the love of all things, please stop it. That is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. And then again, it's just the way it's shot, the way it's like slowly, spoon fed to you, and then, I mean, my God, like the whole ending, to it is.
Oh
just,
yeah, we'll get to the end. We'll save that for a bit,
but I mean, it's all just so cool. And I mean, maybe that's why this hasn't, or maybe an obstacle that's kind of kept this from maybe breaking through to the mainstream or something, is because it is like, I don't think it's a difficult movie to fully get or whatever, but it's not one you can really like casually watch. Like,
no,
if you're just like casually watching Halloween, you're not going to be confused if you space out for like 5 minutes or whatever. Like this, like you could miss something and be like, wait a minute, what the hell is happening now? Like, what is going on?
Yeah, there's so many little lines of dialogue that are important to like following the broad ideas of what's going on, because it's not like we're saying, it's so rich with these ideas. This is a movie for people. In a weird way, I mean, I would always put it in the horror show. I would never consider putting this on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, but it is kind of a movie made for people who love theoretical science fiction, because so much of it is like putting all these ideas in there of like, okay, this is kind of like the science fiction side of religion and how all these things came to be. And the thing with the sending the messages back in time that appear as dreams, obviously the vibe of those is really cool because it's that dodgy video that actually feels just a bit right for 1999, to be honest.
That's a good point, yeah.
But which obviously is just happenstance that things hadn't improved that much until after 1999. But that is so, I don't know, it's a little bit Terminator. In fact, there's a TV show that Netflix did a few years ago called Travelers, which was about people like coming back through time to like try and stop the world going to shit. But they couldn't come back physically, so they'd beam back into people's bodies who were going to die anyway, so they weren't robbing anyone of life.
Oh, interesting. Kind of like a Dead Man situation.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. So no one else is going to get that reference though, but I know Tim knows what he's talking about, so it's fine. So,
is that show any good? I never really heard about it.
Travels is very good. I really like Travelers.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was really into it. This is the sort of sci-fi that I really love. This, because I think this idea, you build up just these little hints, but then you get this idea of like, we're never going to show you what that future is or how bad things are going to get. But the implication that scientists who are somehow surviving in the future are doing everything they can to like break the time barrier to try and like basically beg people in the past to stop it from happening. Like that paints such a picture and gets your mind going about what that future is. Like, how bad is it? How apocalyptic is it? Like, are people like, does it look like the post-apocalypse in the Terminator franchise where people are living underground and hiding from whoever's in power, this demonic presence or whatever it is? Or what, like, and I love that it doesn't flat out answer that. There's so many cool things that this movie does say, but it leaves so many of these big ideas of where the world's going to like a sense of mystery that it's still super intriguing even at the very end. Like, you just sort of get this sense of dread of what's to come because of how desperate they must be to do this.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously we talked about like how, yeah, it doesn't seem like it would have been Carpenter's style to revisit it, but I wonder if there ever was any talks or interest about like doing a sequel or something like set in around the this future 1999 era. Again, I don't think the movie needs it. It stands perfectly on its own, but I'm just kind of curious if anyone ever thought about it.
I've got a funny feeling it didn't do well enough to anyone ever consider paying for a sequel, so it was probably never a real concern. I don't know how I'd feel about that. I mean, I suppose if it was something that ended up being great, although admittedly the quality Carpenter was doing by 1999, I don't know if I would feel, but it's interesting to think about the possibilities and like what could be, but because this is effectively a bottle movie. Like, once it sets everything up, it's in the church, so it's relatively low budget, all things considered, and it's more about the idea.
I mean, there's a lot going on. Like, it's a very high premise, like kind of science fiction-y horror movie, but then in a way it's also like kind of like a zombie movie at some points. Like, we've not even talked about what's going on with a lot of the characters during all this, other than when they're like deciphering some of this information, which we'll get to. But it's a whole separate element of the movie that's there for the horror movie thrills and fun for the gore and all that.
But it's a very old school kind of like sci-fi horror movie in the sense that so much of it is just in the theoretical ideas. Like lots of like old sci-fi movies that couldn't have budgets to show much. It was, you had to sort of rely on the characters like talking about it. Yeah. And debating what it means and what's going on, and some of them were very effective at it, and some of them were just really bad, like 90 minutes of exposition that didn't really flow or make much sense. This is a really intriguing example of doing that, where, like you say, it's sort of sprinkled throughout, it's spoon-fed a little bit at a time, and just when you think you've got a grasp on the previous like batch of things it's been telling you about the science behind this thing, implying how old it is, or translating some of the text, that's when the dreams start. And just when you get an idea, or you start to feel comfortable with the idea of these dreams from the future, we start talking about the fact that the whatever's in the tank, Satan himself, or the son of Satan, or the whatever, like, he wants to bring his father into this world, and that father, as we learn, is on the other side of like a mirror, sort of like they use mirrors and reflections to go into another seemingly dimension, which makes me go, well, is this other dimension hell? Is it an alternate Earth? Is it the upside down? Is it like, there's like, they never show you too much of it to really understand or get a sense of what it is necessarily, but it does feel like, okay, this was a plan millennia in the making, and this is all here so that this thing can bring its dad into the world. And when it teases that stuff, it's like, holy shit, like now we're talking about portals. We're doing almost like a Phantasm style thing with a hand going through a portal.
Visually, it all looks like really amazing too. Like I love all the scenes with this stuff coming through. And I don't know if you know how they shot like the effects on the mirror.
You can actually see a little bit, see some of the shots when it's the main female character, what's her name, Catherine. When she's looking into the room towards the end before she runs in, there's actually a couple of the shots where you can kind of tell there's like fabric where the mirror should be, because like the actress's hand's going through it and it's kind of crumpling a little bit. They've got it obviously super brightly lit, so it's meant to look just pure white bright light, but it does, you can actually see a little bit of the, so I think there's a white fabric she's putting her hand through, and that they're sort of lighting it really heavily.
I guess on that scene, but I was talking about like some more of the scenes where it's like shimmering and liquidy.
Oh, I don't know how they did that.
Because I was listening on the again in the Carpenter interview, and it's funny. He's like, all right, like, I'll tell you guys a secret. Like, now don't do this. It's pretty dangerous. But we actually took, I think he said one of the cranes they were using or something. Like the bottom of it had mercury in it, and they basically broke it open, and they like used the mercury to get that effect, which like,
oh dear, okay,
that sounds extremely dangerous.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's specifically when it's the little mirror, the first time you see her putting her fingers into the little like handheld mirror.
That would probably make sense, yeah, because in the interview I don't think he specifically that seems like that would be it.
Yeah, it's well that you bring that up, because I just read today that a Russian chess player has been arrested for trying to poison their opponent with putting mercury from a thermometer on the chess pieces of their
Jesus.
I'm like, what a wild like Columbo style murder plot to try and win a game of chess. But she get caught on camera doing it. There's like footage of her committing the crime, so it's like, well, good luck with that.
Jesus.
Yeah, don't do that. That's a stupid idea. It's highly dangerous.
Yeah.
But no, like even just when you get that glimpse of the other side, where you just it's like there's just water on the other side. Like I always forget you actually get a glimpse of like, but at this point in the movie, of course, the entity from the tank has been put inside one of the characters. I want to say Kelly. Sounds right. So,
as much as I love this movie, I don't think I'll ever be able to remember the names of the characters.
There's a lot of characters, but to be fair to the movie, I think they don't expect you to remember the characters' names, because they made a good point of casting a lot of very different looking people, so you always just remember them visually. But when she's like all like taken over by the entity, and she's like pulling out the hand of her dad, and you do get this clear shot of what looks like a demon's hand coming out of the mirror. And it's so wild, because as much as we've been talking about technically the father of Satan, and we've been talking about this theological stuff, it's been so much through a science fiction lens. By the time you get to this moment and you just see this red hand with what looks like big black hooves or whatever, it's like, oh shit, it's actually just like a Satan. Like it's a, it's a. In fact, there's even, we kind of glossed over this, but some of the translation talked about how the star that fell from the sky was a, like, you know, like an angel that had been cast out of heaven. So, you know, like, now whether or not that's literally what it was, or just how the you know, the religious people at the time interpreted it is another thing. But that kind of goes in with the classical like version, you know, because I think that's usually what people say, right? Is that Satan was like an angel that got cast out of hell?
Yeah,
heaven?
yeah. I think that's the original canon.
The original canon of the Bible, yes. Before John Carpenter and co improved upon it with a much more interesting version.
This is like, yeah, the new 52 Bible.
Oh, don't say that. No, this is post crisis. It's a good era.
Yeah, and that just reminded me too. There was a really I forget exactly what it said, but there was a part I really liked when the girl was possessed and she was like typing really fast, and I think she like there's something she said like what was it, like the
Would you want me to jump in and tell you?
What did you say, like the something will not save you? What is it?
Okay, so she's typing out the computer. First of all, she's typing in, so this is Lisa, the woman who was translating the book. She gets possessed because the possession spreads in this movie when someone's possessed, squirts liquid from their mouth into the other person's mouth. So she gets possessed and she's typing into the computer, I live, over and over again. And then once this other character, this guy, notices she's typing that, she then types in, the Holy Spirit will not save you.
Yes.
But then she types in, and the god plutonium won't save you either.
Mm-hmm. And then I think like it doesn't end with her saying or typing something that's just like, in fact, you won't be saved.
Yeah, that's how it ends.
That, like, which is just like, it's so just like such a great like kind of creepy line. I love it.
I mean, my favorite part of that is the line about the god plutonium won't save you.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting line. Like, is that
absolutely?
Is that referencing nuclear like weapons and power specifically? Is it just referencing the idea that your science won't save you? Or I even started to think, is this maybe something to do with how the scientists in the future are trying to send back messages? Is this thing aware that that's happening and it's saying, hey, that won't save you either?
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know.
There's a lot.
They may be using plutonium to do that. I don't know. I don't know how much energy it takes to fire a message back through space and time.
Yeah, these are good questions.
I don't know, but either way, I thought it was a really interesting sentence.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like and again, it's just something that could have easily been like cheap or whatever, but Carpenter just has such a great way with words, and it's just like seeing those words on the screen, and just like, oh shit, things are getting real.
They're getting real. We should probably rewind a little bit and just talk about the characters a touch,
sure, yeah.
and just who we've got here. So obviously we mentioned the professor, Barack, played by Victor Wong, the priest Donald Pleasence, who's literally just credited as priest, so I don't even feel bad for not knowing his name. But we're introduced to our main man, young Tom Atkins, who is actually Brian, and he, at the start of the movie, clearly has taken a liking to Catherine, who is in one of his classes, and part of the earliest thing in the movie is that, yeah, he does ask her out, they kind of hit it off, although there's a little bit of thematic stuff set up here that she seems to have had like a negative experience with a man in the past, so she's very hesitant to get into a relationship. But yeah, and he kind of like, you know, he kind of realizes that and asks, you know, basically in like a nice way, he's not pushy or anything, but he just kind of is like, oh, can we start again? Let me try and like sort of, but he does ask her at one point after they've had sex, he's like, hey, like, you know, what negative experience did you have? Like, what did this guy do to you to like give you such a bad, you know, opinion of like all men? And she never quite answers, but it does set up that he's kind of this optimist, like sort of happy guy who tries to like improve and make other people around him happy. So sets up that, it sets up them, and I think having a pair of characters who are like starting to fall in love is a good like counterpoint to all the darkness and evil that's about to you know, be unleashed upon them.
And that's where I really get this Atkins energy, where he just like meets this girl, instantly has a swagger. She's not feeling it, but then regardless, 10 minutes later they're in bed. Like that's like the full Atkins treatment,
Okay. But yeah, they're the ones that talk about Schrodinger's cat and talk about a little bit of quantum physics and all that. Elsewhere though, there's a whole ensemble of characters though. The other one that's probably the most notable is Walter, who's kind of like his friend.
So he's like the jokey guy, right? The one that's like always. How do you feel about him? Because he kind of like he's just like a little bit too much for me.
I feel like the version we would get now of this character is by far too much, right? He's definitely that character who just wants to have sex and he just kind of doesn't take a lot of things around him seriously. But it's very subdued versus... I kept thinking about Nightmare Beach when I was watching this and how the friend in that was just a complete douchebag. Sure. This guy's not a douchebag.
More likable.
He's likable enough. He's just clearly not... His heart's not in what they're doing and wanted to go and try and get laid that weekend. And then we're introduced to Kelly, who's the blonde lady that ultimately gets like... She's not just possessed, but she's the one who actually becomes like the host of the entities. Because at one point, two of the possessed characters bring the tank upstairs and the liquid goes in. In fact, one of my favourite touches that are throughout this whole movie about that tank is that the water or the goo that's dripping from it drips upwards to the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
So again, adding this idea that it's not, it's the anti-whatever, it's the anti-God, it's the anti-matter, it's the anti-whatever, the liquid's going up rather than down.
It's like an upside-down cross. It's going the wrong way.
It's going the wrong way. Yes.
Or the evil way, I guess, I don't know.
We have the... I'm trying to remember. The first woman who gets possessed is the woman with the glasses. She's there. You've got Hitchcock from Brooklyn Nine-Nine who gets his neck snapped early on by the first possessed woman. And he's actually a nice enough guy. He's just kind of looking for her because he's worried because she's not been seen in a while. So it's kind of a shame he gets killed. But there he goes. There's actually a guy who ends up surviving a long time with the rest of the group. But he's definitely like... just a red shirt who hangs around for a long time. Apparently his name's Lomax, but I could have never told you that in a million years. There's the other professor who's like the chemist specialist. He's there with some others to like analyze like the materials and whatnot, and who knows what else. So, and there's a few others. There's some red shirts. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of characters, and it does a good job. There's like the first person who dies is a guy that's leaving. He's not staying with everyone else, and he gets killed by Alice Cooper outside.
Which is a cool thing too, because it shows that like they're all stuck here. Like you say, it kind of becomes like a bottle movie. Like because you really can't leave because of all the homeless people that are around. They'll just kill you. See, when it's done well, there's something I love about the fate of the entire world at stake, but the story takes place in a single room or a single building.
That's cool. I love when scripts can pull that off, and this is a decent example of that to me.
And this is a really like there's a sense of like hopelessness with this movie where like it's not like other movies where you kind of think like, okay, it's stacked against them, but I'm sure like they'll get out and have a happy ending or whatever. Like this, like you really just feel like you're screwed. Like there's very little you can do.
Yeah, and sometimes that doesn't work for me. Like some horror movies feel a bit weird with that, where it feels like the characters have no hope. So why am I invested? Whereas this is more about like the overall feeling of doom, like this is a coming apocalypse and no one can do anything about, but maybe there's going to be a glimmer of hope by the end, kind of thing. And I think the characters not knowing that people are being killed or like taken over and possessed around them for like half the movie is really good actually in this case, because it kind of does this thing where they can't take this that seriously until it's proven to them how real it is. But that's also what's doomed the entire planet, is that these priests that were hiding this thing didn't try and convince everyone else that they had the Antichrist like sitting in a tank underneath a church. If they'd actually been trying to warn people for the last 2,000 years, maybe, people would have known about it and done something about it. But then again, would anyone believe them? Like as Donald Pleasence says, like it was easier to just sell this idea that Satan's like this darkness that's in every man, woman, and child, and we have to fight back against it and we can overcome it. But that was a crock of shit. There's actually a force that is coming that is going to lead to our demise. And all of our humanity is going to be taken away. Because, yeah, all the people who get possessed, like, they're still walking around, but, like, all of what makes them is gone. They're just drones for the evil at that point.
I think there's some really, like, effective creepiness stuff. Like, you know, again, I apologize for not knowing anyone's name, but, you know, the guy that, like, slits his throat, and then when the way he's, like, walking around and just, like, giggling is, like, very unsettling. But it's like the actor pulls it off, like, so well. Like, he's legitimately creepy. He's
the one who walks in on the computer typing and then gets trapped by the two possessed women, so now he's a possessed guy. And then I mean, just to go through the various deaths, which at this point, since we've been jumping around, it's just easier to tackle them in a list.
Sure.
So the first guy goes outside and he is cornered in sort of the alleyway behind the church by the homeless people and Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper stabs him ultimately with like a bike that's like only like half the bike, so it's like the pole that's coming up, the frame of the bike stabs him. So he ends up just kind of dangling there on the bike, and this is an alright little death. My favorite thing about this scene though is actually what distracts him for a bit. Someone is crucified like a pigeon on like a cross. And he's like, what the hell is this? Quite rightly, who did this? This is bizarre. But yeah, there's a pigeon that's been crucified. So the second guy, who's one of the skeptics, who just like doesn't want to, he just wants to leave, and he's outside in the sort of the parking area, and the homeless woman who we saw earlier just sort of runs up and stabs him. It's not really, there's not much to it. It's shot kind of an interesting way. The more interesting thing with him though is that a little bit later he delivers a message to everyone in the building, and this is like a scene where they've all been debating what's going on, and they like hide in the kitchen, or maybe it's before they hide in there, because I think it's before they're attacked, but they're looking out the window and they see him off in the distance, and he's yelling up to them, but his voice is kind of gargly, and you basically realize that this guy is dead, but the evil force, you know, the Prince of Darkness, whatever you want to call it, it's basically using a bunch of cockroaches or something similar to a cockroach to like, his body's just filled with them, and he's being literally puppeted by like 1,000, 2,000 cockroaches, and that's making him speak, and that's why it sounds gargly, because they're literally just like forcing his vocal cords to make the sounds. And it's like kind of a wild idea, but at the end of the scene, like when he's done talking and the message is delivered, like the cockroaches just start to leave his body, so his head falls off, and then like his body kind of crumples, and it's a really cool effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, nothing to add. All right.
I mean, I agree. It's awesome. But yeah, I don't have much to add.
It's definitely an interesting visual. It is definitely a cool, like, practical effect from a distance. You know, seeing like parts of the body kind of like fold and like crumple and whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know how they did it, but fun either way.
I'm trying to think. I feel like I just watched or read something recently that also had like, oh, you know what it was? I think there's a scene in Hellboy Crooked Man where I want to say it's like some possums or something crawl into like this lifeless skin and like animate it like it's a witch thing. So maybe we'll see that in the upcoming movie. I don't know.
You may see it. There's no we in this equation. Thank you very much.
I mean, we'll see. It might be good show fodder.
I don't know about that. I'm still having flashbacks to that horrible 2019 movie.
I'll have to check the ledger. You might owe me one. So.
I don't know about that. I don't know if we agreed to any owing of anything.
Hey, I agreed to do all the freaking Resident Evil movies with you.
That wasn't because I wanted to. That's just duty. That's just the show. That has to be done. Duty.
Oh, okay.
I would say duty.
No, Judy.
Oh, Judy. No, I didn't say Judy. I said duty.
Okay. I was wondering who Judy was. I don't know.
It's a weird word where the D just sounds like a J, isn't it?
It does.
It's a weird word.
It is weird.
Unless you're someone who says duty, like a weirdo.
It sounds like one of our patrons.
try not to insult our loyal fans. Just a suggestion.
They're freaks. What can I say? I love them, but damn it, they're a little strange.
Those were the big kind of like death scenes. Obviously, there's a couple other ones. There's a whole section where after they're attacked and they sort of barricade themselves in the kitchen area, where Walter's actually trapped in a different room, but he can see Kelly, who's become this host, at this point. Because she basically, if there's one weird thing about the movie that I'd say I don't like that much, is that she becomes the host because she like bumps into like the computer when she's like next to the tank. Like she gets like a bruise and then like a symbol appears on it, and then she ends up becoming the host for this thing. And like when they bring the tank in, all the liquid goes into her. And that's all. I mean, that part's all fine. Like if it's picked her as a host, I just don't see why bumping into something by accident is the that's her picked. That's a little bit weird. And not in a good way.
Yeah.
All the other weird stuff I like all the other weird stuff in this movie. That just feels a bit random, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's very minor though, so it's not like feel like a big deal.
There's a whole bit here where they try to like dig through the wall to try and get Walter out, which they do eventually, but things are kind of kicking off by that point, and like all chaos is unleashing. But Walter gets to witness a lot of this stuff and like sort of report back and be like, "She's changing. She looks pregnant." Yes, what you said, Tom?
Oh no, that just well, also I mean that reminded me of just him making like some just really not funny jokes.
Yeah, he makes some weird jokes. So Walter's Asian, right? And what's her name? Lisa, the translator lady. She's also Asian. And he turns to her at one point and says, "Lisa, you could pass for Asian."
Well, yeah, I never understood this.
I don't get it. I don't get the joke. The only thing I can think of is that this is like a weird flirting technique that he's trying. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I saw it. Weird.
Yeah, and then I think at this point when he's barricaded, he like starts telling the witch doctor joke. Again, it's just like, I mean, maybe this is how he relieves tension or whatever. But it just like feels like so weird.
Well,
I don't know.
When he started that joke, he said something like, a Jewish something is into an airport, and I went, where's this going? This may not have aged well. Where's he going with this joke? But then the actual thing, the punchline is like, no, I said Ritz doctor, not witch doctor. And I'm like, okay, that's not that funny. I don't think it's that problematic, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
But also, though, I was just going to say that, again, I love this location, and Carpenter, I think, just uses the space so effectively. Like, he just finds lots of, like, fun things to do with it, and it never feels like, you mentioned, like, Abigail earlier, which, I mean, got to go back a while to see that review, but, like, one of the things we complain about is that it just feels like the space feels so boring. It just constantly feels like they're going from one place back to the other place, back to the other place. But here it's like he's always doing something interesting with it. And it's like, at one point, you have them like, the priest is like kind of hiding from the like other infected characters that are walking around. And then you have this kind of like a siege moment where, he's holed up and like, they're trying to break through, and and just really makes it like an interesting location and does a lot of cool stuff with it.
Even just something as simple as that when the movie starts, it feels like, okay, everyone's creeped out by being in that basement chapel with the tank.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, down there's feels weird and dangerous, but up here we're safe because this is the up top. But then when someone starts getting possessed and they start coming upstairs, it's like, the danger from downstairs is literally spreading into what was considered the safe areas. So it still uses the geography of the building quite well, even if you don't know every in and out of it. It still has like these memorable kind of aspects that help build like, the idea that the evil's growing throughout the building even, and they're less safe as the movie goes on. So I really like that. God, Abigail sucks so much. Like at no point in that movie did she ever feel like a threat, which is just the worst damning thing you can say about it. Anyway,
the weird thing is, so far, I mean, things are gonna change probably pretty soon, but so far for these Octoberthon episodes, we've recorded 2 at this time, and both have been
Tim,
like,
what are you talking about? This is the first episode. What are you talking about?
Well, maybe someone from the future transmitted our next episode to me, so I know the next one is gonna be a banger.
That's a weird thing. It's transmit, but go through all that effort. This is not a recording. This is coming to you from the year 2024.
Actually, it is a recording. It's a recording of a podcast, but it is still from the future. But no, it does feel weird to do good movies on this show.
And sometimes it feels like we go through little droughts. That's fair. I've got some hope for some things coming up though.
Oh no, there's still things I'm excited for that I think have a lot of promise. But
and to be fair, there's a few episodes that are going to be September episodes that we've not done yet. So it's entirely possible that we just had a good episode or two, and what you're saying sounds crazy because like you just like this movie. We don't know that yet.
That's fair.
Yeah, we're beaming this to the future.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So Back to the Future, you might say.
That movie.
Yes, that movie. I was going to make another joke there, and I can't remember what it was. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Was it a Time Cop reference?
Oh, actually, no, I was going to say something else. Again, it's really weird that I'm comparing this at all to Abigail because they're completely different movies, and it's only because Abigail's on my brain. But it's impressive to me that I just said that Abigail in that movie never felt like a threat. In this movie, for at least half the movie, there's no physical like thing causing harm, and there's still more of a threat than there was in Abigail. Obviously, eventually there's a bunch of possessed people that are causing harm, so there is. But just a tank in the middle of a room is more threatening than Abigail. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, any day of the week, I'll take that swirling goo over.
Yes.
The creepy dancing ballerina. Ooh. What if a vampire was a kid? I don't care.
All right. So I guess we're building up to talking about like how the movie ends and like how everything kind of comes together. Poor Donald Pleasence, because he kind of witnesses hiding around the corner and he sees like Kelly, who's like the host, who's fully turned into the Prince of Darkness basically, and she's like putting her fingers into the little mirror and saying, "Come, Father," but then obviously that's too small, so she goes to this big mirror, this big standing mirror, and Donald Pleasence is seeing this, and he sees like her reaching through, and he's like, "Oh, I can't let this happen. Oh, there's an axe here in the corner of the room. I'm going to use this axe." And he cuts off her arm, thinking that he's saving the world, but then her arm just kind of like grows back like really quickly, and then he cuts off her head. So there's this great practical effect of like her like picking up her head. And obviously it's edited so that it just cuts back to her when like the head's supposed to be on already, but it just it's edited quite well in the sense that it really feels like she's just put it on and she's sort of like just adjusting it slightly. So the poor bastard like thinks he's saving the world and doesn't quite achieve it. It ends up being down to Catherine, who at this point sees what's happening, sees the demon hand coming out of the portal.
I love this visualization because I think at this point we've already kind of seen like glimpses of the other side where it's just like
just water and
but again it just looks so cool, and you're just seeing like it's so dark, which I guess I guess that's why he's the Prince of Darkness if this is what his realm is like. But I just love that like the mirror, the portal to the world is just like this like square of light, and then just seeing the hands and stuff coming in, it all just looks so great.
Yeah, and it feels like it keeps introducing new elements that are really exciting. So Catherine basically makes this choice, like she can go and help her now boyfriend, who, by the way, when they were holed up in the kitchen for a while, they had a little tender moment where she's like, "Hey, remember when I said don't get sappy and don't tell me that you care about me, like the morning after we had sex? Yeah, now that's all I can think about, so can we like..." So they have like a little kissy huggy moment. It's nice. But here she has to decide to like go save the world instead of helping him. And he ends up being fine, but she basically tackles like the host who's holding the demon hand, like what's her name, Kelly, and like just dives at them so they all go into the portal. So she basically forces them back into the other side of this portal, and then Donald Pleasence or whoever picks up the axe and smashes the mirror so they can't come back. And the main guy Brian yells no,
freaks out. No,
his the love of his life, the new love of his life, has just went into a portal and might never come back, but probably will never come back. Afterwards, like, hey, she just like sacrificed herself to save everyone. Like she just did the impossible. And I actually thought Dallas Pleasance's character was a little sad after this, because like basically Walter runs out and gets like, you know, medical help and cops and whatever to come and, you know, see to them. All of the possessed people have just dropped dead because they were already gone, right? They were just drones. Donald Pleasence, as he's been carried away on a stretcher, is looking up at like Victor Wong and is like, "Hey, we did it. I saved everyone. I said, like, this thing can't happen now. We stopped the apocalypse. I saved everyone." And I went, "Well, no, Catherine actually saved I mean, I guess in the sense that you brought them all here. So I guess in a sense you definitely had a part to play." But it's almost like he's trying to like give himself hope again, because he's lost so much faith, and like his entire belief system has been shattered, and he found courage to try and fight this demon or this evil at the end, and it failed, and he's just kind of looking, he's trying to claw some faith back again so he doesn't go insane effectively. And I think that it's kind of pathetic, but at the same time you kind of respect why he's having to try and do that to keep his sanity. I don't know, it's interesting to me.
No, it's great. Yeah, it's a good little moment. And of course, yeah, Donald Pleasance, we haven't really talked about that much, but he just kills this character. Like, yeah, he's so good at this. I mean, in a way, I guess it's, you know, I can see like, you know, a bit of a similarity between, you know, him and the Loomis, you know, from Halloween. Like, they're both just, you know, very determined men who like, you know, seem to be attached to this just like evil force.
It's so funny you brought up Loomis, because like, because we hadn't mentioned that connection with Carpenter, I could just see like some bratty comment, the first comment being, "Did you know Donald Pleasance was also Loomis in John Carpenter's Halloween?"
Well, I mean, the two big heavies, like, yeah, he's from Halloween, and then you know, the teacher, was it Victor Wong?
Yes,
right? He's from Big Trouble in Little China, right?
I'd actually forgotten that, but yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, two big, you know, I mean, I would say, you know, like relatively big, but, you know, cut some Carpenter, you know, folk.
I mean, they're in prominent roles in other movies. I mean, I definitely think that Pleasance is the bigger guy. I mean, it says something. I mean, because Victor Wong's also in Tremors, but because I watched it growing up, I always think of him as the uncle, you know, the knockoff Mr. Miyagi from Three Ninjas.
Sure.
Like, that's just what I always think of first when I see his face. But, you know, it's not on him.
A classic's a classic, you know.
I never said that. let's not put words in my mouth now. So yeah, obviously the movie like kind of ends with Brian being really upset, and it's just after like Victor Wong says to him, "Hey, like, she saved us all. She did this to save us." It cuts immediately to the dream again, but this time we hear the whole audio message, and it's the same footage again of like the cameras behind the gate, and it comes out and you start to see like a figure emerging from the front of the church. And earlier we saw like a figure with some kind of robe on or something obscuring itself, clearly the evil that was coming. Here now though, we see Catherine coming out of this entrance, and she holds up her hand just like the evil figure did before, suggesting perhaps that she will come back now. Like the future's changed, but now it's changed in a way where she's going to somehow come back through the portal, and now she's the host of the evil or something. And then that's when Brian wakes up from this message. And I think it's very ambiguous as to, is this a real message he's getting, or is he just dreaming this now? Because, you know, because they do the whole thing where it's the dream within a dream, because he wakes up and he sees Hard lying next to him and he freaks out and wakes up properly.
You know, that's funny. I guess I never really thought about it like that. Like, yeah, it could technically just be a regular dream. Like, he's just having nightmares about it. I always assumed, like, yeah, it was another, like, transmission that was being beamed to him. But that's an interesting take.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, because obviously the movie ends in him getting up, looking at the mirror, and reaching out to touch it as if to see, is it a portal? And it cuts to credits before his fingers actually hit the glass. Which, you know, great ending to end the movie on. But I do think it's very ambiguous here as to, one, okay, if it's real, it's suggesting that she is now going to be the puppet of evil and somehow comes back, and they've not actually stopped anything. So, oh no, that's very foreboding.
Or, I mean, also, like, what if they were the ones that caused like all this shit to happen? You know, like maybe like her going in there and then becoming the instrument of evil could be what set everything down this path. Like, I don't know. There's a lot to think about there.
Or, and this is a wild one here, but you know how this is basically like a portal to another dimension, right? Mm-hmm. Is there another Earth through there? Let's say this movie takes place in the anti-world. Mm-hmm. Does this mean that evil's now in the other world? And this footage we see beamed at the end isn't beamed from the same world. This is actually her now on the other Earth as the instrument of evil. So, like,
really interesting.
They've doomed the other Earth now, or so. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
That was really interesting. I like that idea too. Like, again, this movie is just so rich with ideas. There's a lot to like think about and mine from it.
I think that's why a lot of mainstream audiences don't like it when they see it, is because it's too open. It's too interpret it how you like. You think about the ideas and come up with your own fun conclusion. But I love this stuff
I can see the test audience just being like, so what's gonna happen when he touched the mirror? Like, I don't like it. But no, I mean, I think it's perfect. I love, like, even though they technically won, the ending still just feels so bleak. It's like, all right, we're still getting the messages. Like, what does this mean? Like, is there no hope? Did we make things worse? Or at the very least, is my life just screwed up and I'm just going to be like haunted by these nightmares for the rest of the time? Like, it's a really dour ending, but I mean, it fits the movie perfectly.
And here's another question: if the message is real, because if it isn't, then it's just him having a nightmare, and it's like this is just going to live with him forever, right? Yeah. But if it is real, then the question then becomes, why is he receiving it? Is he receiving it because he was around that tank like everyone else was? So it's an after effect where he's just still connected to it, or is this new message, this changed message, been specifically beamed to him because he's him?
Because he has a connection with her,
yeah. Like, is it being beamed to him because he's someone that may actually be able to do something about it?
Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know. And I mean, are we screwed if, like, if she's this vessel of evil, but she can manipulate him to like have him bring her into this world? Like, are his feelings so strong that he's not going to be able to resist? Like, there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, can we trust these people beaming these messages back? Are they what we think they are? Are they people asking for help? Or are they people manipulating the present day?
Thought about that.
Yeah, like this ideas.
That's really interesting too. Yeah, like that's something I thought about before. Like, again, what do we know about whoever's doing this? Can they be trusted? It's a lot to think about. I mean, again, I don't think you need any type of sequels or follow-ups or whatever, but I can. There's so many ideas. Like,
I mean,
if it was more of a hit, I'd wonder if it's something they think about.
It'd be very risky because almost anything they do would be underwhelming compared to what our minds are concocting up. That's not to say that it can't happen, because as long as it has something new to add to it and to say with it, with whatever path it takes, it could work. But it takes talented writing. It takes a lot of talented things to make that happen. By never going back to it, you get to just live in this wonderful ambiguity of what it all actually means. And it's very much like, I feel like people who love the questions this movie poses and doesn't give answers to are the same people who probably enjoyed Lost.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In some way. So if you like that kind of a mystery, and I think it's done really well here, I think Prince of Darkness works really well.
Absolutely.
So, all right, well, Tim, what was your scene of the movie?
Ooh, hey, this is another tough one because there's a lot to pick. Actually, it is kind of hard because it's like a lot of the things that are very memorable. It's not really like specific scenes. Like there are really great scenes, but it is just the general. It's sprinkled vibe and atmosphere. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess for this you have to think about it less, like, because the mission here is still just to pick the best scene in the movie for whatever reason. So, like, okay, the best scene of the movie may not be the reason why the movie's great, but so you're just gonna have to judge it on other merits, I guess. Is what I'm saying.
I don't know. Yeah, that's fair. I think I'm gonna go with, and I think the ending. I really like. Again, visually, it's. I feel like it's very striking. I love just the way everything's like represented with the mirror and her diving in, and I just think it looks so cool. And
so that part of the ending, but not the very ending. That like
Yeah, like that, like whole her diving into the mirror and then shattering it, and just making it with that shattering, just you can feel like the pain when the main character like screams and stuff. So I really like that whole segment, but yeah, I mean, it's hard to choose. There's a lot of good stuff though.
Yeah, and there is a shot of her in the water afterwards. You see that on the other side. We didn't mention that, but it's probably worth mentioning. I think for me, it has to be the dream. I mean, I don't know which specific one, I guess, but like just in general, like when it cuts.
I was thinking about that too.
When it cuts to that dream sequence, but it's not like a dream; it's like a video recording, and you hear this staticky voice saying, "This is not a dream." Like having a dream sequence where the only thing you hear is the phrase "This is not a dream" is kind of weird and creepy. And like, what does that mean? Sure. What is it then? Like, like. Give props to John Carpenter for making something that's a dream actually be good in a movie, because more often than not they're a subject of discontent on this show whenever dreams come up in horror movies.
Fair, yeah.
But not in this movie. In this movie, it's a wonderful, interesting mechanic and makes you think about, someone like you could do a whole movie that's just based on that concept of someone beaming something into someone's dreams and them having to like come to terms and realize that they're not just dreams, that there's something more to them, like they're coming from. I'm sure there's movies like that, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
That's a cool idea. Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, that's my pick for scene of the movie. I mean, I guess the full one at the end where it's changed to her is probably the most interesting on its own, but to be honest, I'm just kind of picking them all as a set, but
that's fair. Yeah.
All right, MVP of the movie.
I mean, I don't know. Is it possible to give it to the goo? Like, I don't know that.
I mean, it's. I'm not going to fight you on it. Like, it can be for whatever reason you want.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be fair, I'll give it to a human character. But again, I do think the goo, the liquid Satan, as it were, is just so visually striking, and it's always so cool whenever they go back to it. But yeah, my MVP. Again, it's kind of tough because I feel like there's a lot of people I like for different reasons.
Space Jesus. You could pick Space Jesus.
I mean, that was cool. I mean, I'm trying to pick between Donald Pleasence or Victor Wong, because I feel like I almost want to put him as a set, because it feels like they're like kind of like the same character, just coming from like the complete different
sides.
Yeah. I'll give it to I guess Donald Pleasence, because he I don't know, it's always a delight to see him, and he always brings a lot of gravitas to his character, and he's very entertaining to see. Yeah.
Oh, actually, just before I pick mine, shout out to the scene foreshadowing where it's going with the cartoon. I think it's Walter's watching a cartoon, and it's like it's like a devil going after Tom from Tom and Jerry, and I'm like, right. Oh, that's a bit of foreshadowing. My MVP, like, I feel like my weird cop-out answer here is to say the mysterious person or persons beaming the messages back through time, because that's
sure
like one of the most exciting concepts in the movie to me. Because I think it's a fair thing to say that this movie is less a character movie and more an ideas movie, and it's the ideas that give it the strength. So in a weird way, it's like, well, I don't know. Like, I think it's maybe going against the purpose of picking an MVP to just say John Carpenter, even though.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think it'd be okay to say, like maybe picking the composer in a certain movie, because the music's the thing that really makes it all tick together. And I could do that here, because the music actually is very good and does add a lot to the movie.
Yeah.
But it feels weird to pick the director, because, well, I mean, you could just do that with any movie you like. You could just pick the director and call it a day. That's boring. But it definitely isn't a movie where one particular character stands out as well, which is why it's so tough.
I mean, the fact that, like, again, I love this movie, but I can't even really remember most of the names of the characters. Like,
yeah, which I'll reiterate, I think the movie knows that there's a lot of characters, and it's why it doesn't make you. You know, in fact, there's even literally a running thing in the movie where characters are looking for the first girl that got possessed, and they keep saying, "Oh, where's Susan?" And almost every person he asks says who, and he goes, "Oh, the woman with the glasses," and it's like, "Aha, thank you." Like, it's like the movie knows that, and it's like it's making sure that the audience isn't lost in spite of like there being too many names to remember, because they all look very different.
Yeah, and also like it's not like they have cool names like Snake Plissken or something. Like they're just
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I just want to say on the IMDb photos for all the actors, you can tell the actress who played Lisa didn't do much else, because her photo was literally the tank of goo from this movie.
Okay.
Like, that's a bit unfair. So yeah, I'm going to be a bit coy here and say the mysterious people from the future who are beaming the messages back.
Sure. The others.
The others, yes. So that's my pick.
Who's the big floating head from like Power Rangers?
Oh, Zordon.
Zordon. So like if this green goo is like the anti-god, would that be like the god then?
Zordon's god.
Like I don't know, they do kind of look like opposites of each other.
I actually kind of like what the modern movie did with Zordon, where Zordon was the Red Ranger who like kind of like died but kind of got put into the computer system, and that's how Zordon became Zordon.
Okay, I actually still haven't seen that yet, but it's...
I mean, that's not a huge spoiler. That's just kind of like...
Oh, no, I mean, I don't care about the spoilers. It just reminded me that, like, oh, yeah, I should watch that at some point.
It's definitely... the amount of money Krispy Kreme must have paid them for product placement is unreal. But it's definitely got some merit. It's not a bad movie, I don't think.
I don't know. I heard it was a little woke. I don't know.
Tim's joking. He's being facetious. Oh, dear. All right, Tim, what are you rating Prince of Darkness?
I mean, obviously, I'm going to go very high, and I was kind of thinking, like, do I go, like, 9.5, but I don't know. It's, you know, it's the 600th episode, and...
Whoa. It's 599.
It's almost up to the 600th episode.
we are the price of the PlayStation 3 right now, Tim. $5.99.
That's how much PlayStation 3 costs now?
Well, not now, but when it launched, it was a big deal. It was overpriced when it came out. Like, when they're on stage, like, it's $5.99. People make fun of it. It's a thing.
Jesus, that is way too much. But hey, you did get what, Resident Evil 6 on it?
Oh, great example. Not even an exclusive, Tim. Come on.
But yeah, so we've been talking about how much we love it all night. I mean, there really isn't much I dislike about the movie. I mean, I guess if I, think maybe like a few things here and there, like, oh yeah, maybe like I didn't love this character, or maybe maybe this character could have been a bit more memorable or something, but it doesn't really affect the enjoyment or the artistry of the movie. So I don't know. I don't have really anything negative to say. So I think I'm just going to go a straight 10. Like oh
wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is, definitely a personal favorite of mine. And like you said, like when you watch it, like it always like, even though like you've seen it a couple of times now, like every time I watch it, I'm still like in awe of it, and I think it does go up in my mind each time. So yeah, I'm gonna give it the illustrious perfect score,
the coveted 10. Like I said at the start of this, the moment this movie starts and you hear the dun 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 dun, right, and like it starts playing out and the music's rolling as you're introduced to the characters. It already has so much presence. It's immaculate, like filmmaking in terms of like just drawing me in. That said, though, I'm not going to go 10. Right? There's only about 30 movies, give or take, that I've given a 10 to, and I don't think this
30? 30?
30, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, which is not a lot, and I think my database, I've got like 3,000 plus movies that I've seen, and
wow.
So only 1% of the movies I've seen, give or take, if we had a 10.
Interesting.
But it's not perfect. I think, if to shoot this to the moon for me, I think all you have to add to it really is maybe just characters that I care about a bit more. Actually give me a couple of main characters that I'm really invested in. I don't think it bothers me too much that I'm not that invested in them, because they serve their purpose in the movie fine. But that would be the sort of thing that probably puts it like over the moon and into like just like absolute
That's fair,
masterpiece territory. And to be fair, like Halloween's a 10 for me. Like I think that is the perfect example of the movie. Is I think this is a little bit messy in how convoluted the mythology is, but I love how convoluted the mythology is, and I lap it up when I watch it.
Yeah.
But I get why it doesn't work for everyone, where some people would be like, oh, this is just a lot of nonsense and I don't care about these ideas. But if you can let yourself get into the ideas, it's magical of an experience. So yes. So for me, it's a 9 out of 10. But still super high scores. That's an overall 9.5, which we don't have that many movies that our average goes above a 9, Tim. So that's another one to add to the list.
Yeah.
So, very good.
Well deserved, yeah.
What a way to start off the Octoberthon. So, yeah. Now, for most of the month, I'm not going to tell you what's coming next because just in case the order changes, but I feel quite confident that because we did the next one for episode 600, it has to be next. So next week, or not even next week, sorry, because it's the Octoberthon, in a few days' time, it'll be The Omen. So we're going to do the whole Omen franchise this October. So starting with the original episode 600. Now, it should have been 666, but unfortunately they put a new movie out, so we had to do it this year. But regardless, that's what's coming. But there's several episodes a week, 3 or 4 a week, especially including the Patreon bonus episodes, which, by the way, if you're a patron or you want to go be a patron, you can join up and help support the show and all the other shows we do in Male Fuzz Movies and Male Fuzz TV. But in October especially, you normally get 1 exclusive episode in a month. This month we're aiming for 3. I'm hoping we hit that, but at least 2, but it should be 3.
Yeah, be doable.
So we're doing that. Plus at the $5 and up tier, you get access to even more streams. There'll be a couple of those this month. One of them will have been some kind of vote. Obviously, I can't really promote the voting things anymore because the votes would have been in September for October. But, you know, there's lots of things to sink your teeth into in October for streams especially. But there's also regular things. Criterion Cut extra reels are there every month with me and David. Extra reels even had Tim guest star on an episode in August for Madam Web. That's a show, by the way, where we review the worst movies ever made. Sometimes they're so bad they're good, but sometimes it's just pain and misery. And I'm actually a little bit worried, Tim, because just today, reviews for the Borderlands movie came out, and it started at 0%, but it did go up to 3%. So
okay.
There's a chance that that's going to be an extra reels early next year.
Is that Eli Roth?
Yes. Although I think he kind of left the movie and let someone else finish it, and he went to do Thanksgiving because it's been on the shelf for a while. They shot it ages ago. It's been kind of limbo for a while. Which, by the way, we are going to do a Thanksgiving this year. We're going to do it around Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Do you ever play the games at all, or do you have any?
Yeah, I've played. I've never finished one, but I played maybe 30 hours of the first one, and I've probably put in like 40 hours into the second one.
Do they take place on another planet?
Yeah, they're on Pandora.
What, from?
Not from Avatar. I'm sure it's Pandora. Let me double check that, but I'm sure the planet and
I don't know anything about them, and I actually, believe it or not, went to the movies this past weekend, and it's the first time I saw a trailer for it, and I was like, oh wait, it's on another planet? I thought it was like a post-apocalyptic Earth thing. But. Yeah,
it's well, at least the first game is Pandora. There is some other ones listed here, so I assume some of the sequels might go elsewhere. But I did play a little bit of 3, but like, you know, it's kind of the same thing over and over again at a certain point.
Yeah, I already had 0 interest, so I'm not. Wasn't really planning on seeing it, but
it looks really bad though. Like it's pretty rough. So hopefully you enjoyed the first episode of Octoberthon 2024, and we will see you throughout the month for lots of other treats. We've got some new 2024 movies that we've not gotten to yet planned on the schedule. We've got some weird exclusive Patreon episodes that we're going to do, and we've got a couple of just oddball picks that we wanted to make and squeeze in there for variety's sake. So look forward to all of that.
Yeah, it's always a fun time, and then who knows, sometimes we might have some surprises come up if we, I'm sure we'll all be watching lots of stuff, and maybe if an idea of a bonus episode or something strikes one of us, you never know. So just pay close attention. It'll be a good time.
Yeah. And just to sort of I won't say what anything is right now, but I will say there's at least one famous classic horror movie that I've not even seen that we're doing that I'm excited to do. So that's fun. There's a cult favorite from the 80s that I've heard about for years that I've not seen that I'm looking forward to doing. Yeah, there's a few interesting things. So we'll see you throughout the month for that. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We do appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.